Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August Advocacy Update Series from DMI. This is new for 2023. Our Advocacy Update Series provides our members and the greater community opportunity to learn about DMI's advocacy work, our initiatives and priorities, and get a deeper dive into some pressing and awesome issues we're going to hear today here in downtown. For this edition, we have our great friend, the director of the Wisconsin Veterans Museum, Chris Kolakowski, who's going to talk about the Veterans Museum and potentially a new project right at the top of state on the square. We can't wait to hear more about this project, but we would not be here today if it wasn't for our sponsors and our great friends. Our major series sponsor for the Advocacy Update series is the Cinnair Company. We also have Fiore Companies and Hush Blackwell. So a huge thanks to our friends at Cinnair, Fiore Companies, and Hush Blackwell. And we have the Senior Vice President for Business Development with Cinnair, Chris Gillings, with us again for this Advocacy Update. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing great. How is everything in Cinnair's world?
Good, busy. Like most, we're still trying to wrestle with the challenges the world throws at us every day. But the mission that we serve is to make sure that communities remain healthy and that housing gets built for those that need it. So it's always the good fight, and we keep it up.
Well, and one of those important points about housing is to have amenities right near your facilities, and places like museums do matter. I mean, you try to build your locations in and around the amenities that matter to people. Why is that so important to put everything pretty close to your projects?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to the health of communities, right? When you're talking about affordable housing, you're talking about those that are spending a good share of their income, making sure that they have a safe and affordable and dignified place to call home. And that's the foundation of stability for lives, stability for careers, stability for communities. And at the end of the day, being in an area, and one of the treasures of working in Madison and living in Madison is obviously State Street, but having access to walkable amenities, to entertainment, and for the ability to learn history, right? State Street is such an important corridor for not only the city of Madison, but for the state of Wisconsin. It links the Capitol, and it links the university, which were founded in coexistence with one another, and having resources like the Veterans Museum that are available to citizens of the community to come and see not only the history of our great state, but what veterans and the military have contributed not only to this state, but to our country, is an important lesson to have. So we love seeing amenities like the Veterans Museum, not only because it's been a long-time landmark at the top of state, as you mentioned, but because it tells some of the story of our past. And it's a tremendous resource to have. So I'm excited to hear what Chris can share about updates for the Veterans Museum and their exciting work.
I mean, hear what you just said about how important our history is, our state's history, our government's history, and honestly, the history of the Isthmus. We've been here. People have been living on this land, the Ho-Chunk Nation, for 13,000 years. And right, to tell that story in just even the last couple of hundred years is so important for our friends at the Veterans Museum. Before we get to our conversation with Chris Kolakowski, we are going to give an update about all things DMI in the advocacy world. We want to say a huge thanks again to Chris Gillings and our friends at Cinnair, our friends at the Fiore Companies, and Hush Blackwell for your partnership here with our advocacy update. There's a lot happening in the advocacy world in and around downtown. We're going to go over a couple of the items to keep you all up to date with what DMI is working on the advocacy front. First big subject, and we just started talking about, is the State Street pedestrian mall. Some of you may understand that there is a pilot project, a potential exploratory closure of the 400 through 600 blocks of State Street that basically runs from Warby Parker all the way down to Walgreens on State Street. The buses were removed from those blocks several months ago with the Metro Transit Network redesign. And the city is putting together a pilot project. And there's a resolution happening now, working its way through the legislative system within the city to create a pilot to see what could happen if we close down those 400 through 600 blocks of State Street at certain times next summer. Really to gather information about what could happen. DMI vigorously and zealously supports this initiative and are doing everything we can to hope that it passes. We want this data to help inform not only what could happen in a temporary closure, but what could happen permanently on State Street? We know some big changes could be coming in the next 5 to 10 years, and we need to be prepared for those and what that could look like. A new State Street with new infrastructure and new businesses in and around that area. It is the heart of our city, one of the hearts of our commercial districts in our community, and we want to make sure that we get it right. So this pilot project is an important first step. City legislature, the city council is meeting on this here in September, and we hope for its successful patches as again, DMI is zealously working for this to happen. Next up, we have the Isthmus Safety Initiative. We discussed this before in our advocacy update, but the Isthmus Safety Initiative is a group of partners working on safety issues in and around downtown, and mainly focused on reducing gun crimes and reducing sexual violence in downtown, with predominantly looking at the areas, the same area we just talked about in the 400, 500, and 600 blocks of State Street and University Avenue. This is a multidisciplinary team approach that worked to get a $1 million federal burn criminal justice initiative grant for work in this area. And we're super thankful for our partners. DMI is an original signatory on this and one of the groups that helped create this initiative. We also are working with our friends at Capital Neighborhoods, Inc., with the residents and CANA, the two residential areas, the Community Development Division, Madison Police Department, the Public Health Madison-Dane County, and UW through their Population Health Institute. There's a lot happening right now with this project, including mainly on two focused areas through something called CEPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. And a lot of that work is happening on the Buckeye lot, which is bounded by Gilman and Gorham. And then I think importantly for our members here is something called Safer Bar. And Safer Bar is a de-escalation and bystander intervention program working with owners, managers, and staffs of hospitality institutions in and around downtown to help stop sexual violence before it happens. This is normally a training that costs a significant amount of money, but our good friends at RCC, aptly led by Dana Belbon, are offering this as part of the grant for free for any downtown business that wants to participate. So I would highly recommend doing this over the next year. It is very important training for the staffs of bars, restaurants, attractions, hotels, different places where we could see instances of sexual violence. And we are very thankful for the partnership with RCC and Public Health for providing this funding. And thank you to the federal government as well for the $1 million grant. So please, if you know any bars that want to participate, we would encourage everyone to make this as safe an environment as possible for everyone that comes downtown. Next up, Regent Street. A lot of activity on Regent Street. Downtown Madison, Inc. submitted 26 amendments to the city's comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is a 10-year document, comprehensively planning, as it's called, the city of Madison. And we, in the middle of it, are allowed to make amendments. Any citizen is allowed to make amendments, and DMI submitted 26 in and around the Regent Street area, mainly bounded by Regent to the north and then south on Dayton Street, but a few parcels also on the south side of Regent Street. We're trying to create more density and better use of the land. We're seeing such demand for housing in and around campus and downtown. And this is one area where we think you can see more density. So we're proposing to have the height limits increased in and around Regent Street. We think this is good for land use planning. We think this is good for transportation, obviously housing affordability, and it will help with the cultural vibrancy and character. Look, development is happening in that area now. There are over 600 units currently in construction on Regent Street. Another 100 units are in the planning work now. And we know of at least 800 more units in the planning, and there could be significant more. We're trying to signal to the development community, this is a place to do development. We think it helps, again, with housing affordability and really will help meet the needs of the city in this area. We are very supportive of this, and we are working through this process with the Plan Commission in the next several weeks. I do have a copy of a map, and if anyone is interested, we can certainly get this information to you. But this map here shows the exact area that we are proposing and the different heights that we are looking to propose in and around Regent Street. We're working with the city government and with the policymakers on the Plan Commission and the city council to see if we can make some of these height density additions become a reality. If you have any more questions on that, though, please let me know. We also are watching another vacant lot in the city, which is the Brayton lot. The city is having a series of public discussions about an RFP, a request for proposal, the city is going to put forward later this year for redeveloping, I should say, developing the Brighton lot, since it's a surface parking lot. This is bounded by East Wash, Butler, and Main Streets in the east, kind of on the eastern side of downtown. The city wants more information about what could happen in that space. We could certainly see a significant amount of housing, affordable housing. Could we see childcare? Could we see lab space? Could we see some commercial and some retail? We could see all of the above on right now a block that isn't used at all. And it is right now a buffer between Cap East and Cap Square. If we can get a great project, it can help create even more density and housing affordability in and around town. And when you couple that with the potential redevelopment of the government sites, Jeff 2 and Jeff 3, just kitty corner from this, you really can see a very dynamic new section of downtown, one that is already developing very significantly. Last up, I promise, and then we're going to get to the star of the show. You don't want to hear me rattle on forever, but I guess you just have listened since you're still listening, where we have one more update on our future meetings. We've got our biggest event of the year, our annual celebration this year, again on the rooftop of the Monona Terrace on Thursday, September 21st from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. Come and join us for networking. We're going to have a celebration. We're going to have music. We're going to have vibrancy. We're going to have stations with projects like the Veterans Museum describing all of these amazing changes happening here in downtown. I hope you can join us. It is our one fundraiser of the year. So we hope as many of you can join us and help support all of us here at Downtown Madison Work. And we hope the great work and advocacy work that you want to support. We also have another important meeting, our What's Up Downtown Breakfast, which we're going to be talking again about the state government sites. And we have Secretary Kathy Blumenfeld of the Department of Administration talking about the state's Vision 2030 and what they want to do to move forward with all of the state projects here in downtown. But most importantly, Jeff 1, Jeff 2, Jeff 3, and the state office building. We're excited to hear directly from the secretary what the state's plans are. All right. That's it for me. Speaking of state government, though, and the plans moving forward, boy, does the team at the Veterans Museum have a dynamic new idea for the top of State Street. And we are honored to bring our good friend, the executive director of Wisconsin Veterans Museum, Chris Kolakowski, here to discuss more about the Veterans Museum and potential project they have in the future. Chris, how are you doing?
Doing fine, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. If you don't know Chris, get to know Chris. He's one of the great minds in downtown. He's a historian, and I was at Rotary one day. Oh, and he just gave this amazing presentation. He knows so much about the museum business. He's one of the gems in downtown. So I'm so excited to have him here for the conversation. First question for us, Chris, is, what is the Veterans Museum? What do you all do inside this amazing space? And how can the community become more involved with the Veterans Museum?
Well, that's a very big question to lead off.
Three-part question. Sorry, my fault.
That's all right. I'll take it in component parts. The Veterans Museum actually will be turning 125 in 2026. We were founded in 1901 as the GAR Memorial Hall, the Grand Army of the Republic Memorial Hall. First person to have my job, the first person to have the majority of my staff's jobs were Civil War veterans. So we were founded by veterans for the people of Wisconsin. Our mission is to preserve, interpret, and affirm the role of Wisconsin veterans in America's military history from the Civil War right up to the present day. All branches, all services, no matter whether you served in combat or whether you served in peacetime, we cover it all. We have been in our current location since we opened June 6th of 1993. So we were in the Capitol. We were actually in the Capitol for a long time. It's now known as the GAR or the GAR conference room is where we were. And we've been over here for 30 years at 30 West Mifflin, the location I'm sure most of our audience knows very well. Our mission, as I mentioned before, if you walk into the museum, you'll see three tenets, which are kind of how we organize all the great stories that we have and the three things we want people to walk away with. Number one, every veteran is a story. No matter who you are, no matter when you served, it's worthy of remembrance, it's worthy of respect. Second, Wisconsin was there. There's a lot of historical events that most people may or may not realize have a Wisconsin connection. For example, some of you may remember the name Roberta Wells, who was very prominent in local politics for a long time. During World War II, we have her uniform on display in the museum, and because during World War II, she worked for Marine Public Affairs in Honolulu, and was the first person to develop, when it came in from Guam, she developed the famous photograph of the flag raising on Iwo Jima, and started the worldwide distribution process. And right from a woman connected right here to Madison, and that's just one of many, many, many examples I could come up with. But again, the idea Wisconsin was there. We may know some of these historical events. We may know some of these historical, items, whatever, images. We may not realize there's a Wisconsin connection. And then the third thing is this still matters. This is not ancient history by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, in many ways, to understand the world today, but also this nation and this state, you have to understand and appreciate the service and sacrifice of Wisconsin veterans. So that in a nutshell is who we are and what we do. We've got about 13,000 square feet of display space, about 25,000 objects ranging in size from collar insignia all the way up to the aircraft that you see in the museum and everything in between. We've got a research archive that is used from people around the world, across the state, and also across the nation. So it's a tremendous, tremendous asset for the state of Wisconsin, and I'm really proud and pleased to be leading the elite staff that does what they do over there every day with a lot of passion and creativity. So I think I've covered two of the things. I'm not sure what else I missed though, Jason.
Well, we can just continue the conversation. I got to say though, let's just pause and say, head to the museum if you haven't been there. It is a wonderful place to go and celebrate our veteran community and learn much about our history, right? Just one story you told is one of millions of stories we have of our veterans here. How has the location, which is a fantastic location at the top of State Street, how has it served the museum and your community well?
To be honest, there's no better location. There is no better location than being at the top of State Street. As Chris said earlier, as you said, State Street in many ways is the beating heart of Madison, and by extension, the beating heart and the kind of the spine and the sinews, whatever analogy you want to use, of the entire state. The way it connects the university on one end with the state capitol on the other. And so being on there would be significant, but being at the head of State Street, directly across the street from the Capitol, puts us right in the center. I don't have to explain to you the importance of that corner. One of the things that we've done in the last few years is we started doing a study looking at the future of the Wisconsin Veterans Museum. And in the course of that study, during that process, as we looked at different locations, we looked at a lot of different options. The number one pedestrian street corner in the entire state, as you quote many times and has been quoted by others many times, is right outside our front door. So that is a tremendous asset that certainly most of my other 49 counterparts in the other states can't say that they sit on their number one pedestrian corner.
That's true. That is I hadn't thought of it that way, that you can go brag when you go to the Veterans Museum Association and say, I'm the one museum at the number one use pedestrian intersection in their state. I like that.
We are right at the heart of the capital city of the great state of Wisconsin. And through the study, as we looked at a lot of different options, just to see what, play around with options. Look, it kept coming back to where we are, and a lot of it was two things. First of all, it was the pedestrian traffic. It was just kind of being in the center. But the other thing was the synergy that we have. First of all, with the Capitol, the State History Museum, and us, school groups, and you've probably seen the school buses that will come and park. They will come from all over the state and will come for the day, hit all three places, and then leave. They come from near and far. And so having that is a tremendous thing to leverage. But it's not just leveraging that, it's leveraging the shops, the restaurants, but it's also leveraging things like Overture, things like Momoka, walking down to the university, being not far from the Kohl Center, all the assets that make downtown vibrant, we're right in the middle of. And it all helps, we're all in this together, as I tell people, and it all helps. The restaurants drive the traffic to us. We drive traffic to the restaurants and shops and things like that. And being able to have that synergy together really, really makes a huge, huge difference.
So it sounds like the future is bright for the museum. You did this study. What is the future of the museum? What is happening in the current status of the potential project, and how could this new potential project better serve the visitors, the community that come to the museum?
Let me start with kind of where we are and where we've gone in the last 3 decades. When the Veterans Museum, the current Veterans Museum that you saw opened in 1993. It's leased space, and the final renewal on the lease, or 5-year renewal, started in January of 2020. So it'll expire in 2025. The state does have an option to acquire the building. We can talk more about that here in a minute. But the idea was that sooner or later, the Veterans Museum would outgrow the space. When your storyline covers to the present always keeps moving. Just to give you an idea, as a matter of fact, the GAR Memorial Hall closed on November 10th, 1989 to move out of the Capitol, one day after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And so when you go to the museum today, what you see is a great museum for 1993, but as history has moved forward, and that's no shot at anybody that did it before, because believe me, it's a challenge, and I understand the challenges they dealt with. But here we are 30 years later, and when you go there today, the one section of the museum that basically 5-7% of the museum that was supposed to be 1989 to the future is now Desert Storm, Iraq and Afghanistan, and the USS Cole, and the military operations of the 1990s. We only have 13% of our display space of roughly 13,000 square feet that is available for anything after 1945. So in other words, almost 80 years of history. So we've outgrown the space. And that's to say nothing of our back of house things, the archives, things like that just, we need better space. We need a better reading room, but we also need a better program space to do more with programs, to do more community engagement, maybe do some veteran service fairs, things like that we're looking at. Because right now, all we have is really a for lack of a better term, a glorified conference room that is can seat up to 50 people. I mean, we do a lot of things with it, but it only seats 50 people. If we had a bigger, more modular space, there's even more that we can do. So quite frankly, we've outgrown the space that we've had. It's been a great space for us. We've maximized it. But as that 5-year renewal hit, it was time, the last one, it was the state started taking a look at, okay, what's the future of the Veterans Museum? And the study looked at a lot of things. First of all, it looked at location. And we talked a little bit about that. And it kept coming back to Madison, and then within Madison, downtown, and within downtown, right where we are for reasons we've discussed. But the other thing that it looked at was it looked at the requirements of the future. And I emphasized as we went through the project, I said, let's not look at the museum's requirements now. Let's look at the museum 50 to 75 years down the road. And so what that means, triple the display space. Also, much more programming space, including a big modular auditorium that could seat 250 people for speeches. We could do banquets. We could host ceremonies there. For example, I'd love if the Adjutant General was to host a change of command there, or host different of galas or different events, and just make it a much more accessible and useful space for not just the museum, but also for our partners, our community partners as well. And we were looking at it too in the sense that this is a once in a generation project, just like the one in 1993 was. This is a once in a generation project. Let's make sure that it's not just working for our generation, but it's working for the generations of veterans as we go forward. And so that's what that's what the study came up with. That's what you probably have seen some of in the press. It's a total of $140 million all in, including site acquisition. And, we're working on that. We can talk more about that here in a minute. The first part of this has been funded with the legislature and the biennial budget. When they saw this plan, they saw what was looked at. And they saw, for example, only 3% of our collection right now is on display. Well, this plan will get over 20% of basically bring us up to the standard of museums of our size, which usually have about 20% of our collection. This will do that, but it'll also increase our ability to tell our stories more effectively and just give us more space. And when the legislature saw that, they said, yes, we need to acquire the building and start this process. And that was in the budget that was passed, and the Department of Administration is working on the acquisition process. as we speak.
So you acquired the facility. What happens next, right? I mean, what's the timeline for potentially the best case scenario for seeing this new facility here in the heart of downtown?
Best case scenario is if we acquire the building, and then in this biennium, our foundation, the Wisconsin Veterans Museum Foundation, is undertaking a capital campaign, and they've already raised, of their $40 million target, they've already raised over 12, and they're working on more. But the idea is between that, the legislature, and other sources that we could get to resource the balance of the project, we're hoping that that happens in the summer of 2025. And there's a tremendous opportunity that we're making people aware of, because June 14th, 2025 is the 250th birthday of the U.S. military. And so to us, that's a tremendous opportunity, not just to showcase what veterans have done, what the military has meant, and the tradition of service, but also, quite frankly, there's an opportunity there. What better way to say thank you to veterans than to enumerate and to fund the balance of the project? And that's both on a public side and a private side. Assuming that happens, the museum will there'll be design, and there'll be some finalizing design and things like that. Assuming that happens, the museum would probably close in early 2027, be closed for a few years, and then reopen in 2029 or 2030. So we're basically on a similar path. If you've been following what what Wisconsin Historical Society is doing with the State Museum across the street from us, we're basically on the same path. We're just a few years behind. But even now, we're starting to think about that, that timeline, but also what can we do to stay open? What can we do to stay engaged with the community? We don't want, when a museum closes, it's real easy for people to forget you. And we don't want that to happen. In fact, we want to help people get excited to see us reopen and beat down the doors when we reopen and see the new Veterans Museum.
This confluence at top of state is pretty impressive with the Wisconsin History Museum and what you're doing. Really can see such a dynamic space, right? That already is a dynamic space in downtown, but become even more dynamic, particularly with those buildings interfacing between the street and the interior. And that's one of the things that you're focused on, right? Is to make it more attractive for people to come in and really enjoy the museum. And just if you're walking by, saying, going to the farmer's market, right? You really want to make it more interactive with the street itself and with the Capitol directly across the street.
As you know, curb appeal is a real thing. And that's something that we also, as we did the study, we convened some focus groups, we talked to the community, we did some visitor surveys and things like that. And one of the things that really struck me was, don't make it look like a fortress, implying with the current museum with dark windows, it's kind of hard to tell what's inside, although our store does a really good job of curb appeal within the limitations of the space. And that's something that we took to heart. And it's something where, we want people, even if we're not open, when we're open 6 days a week, but even if you walk by in the evening, you still should be able to kind of see inside, get a feel for what's in there, and have a really nice interaction with the street. And then, of course, when we're open, because really, if you think about it, when you go to a museum or a historic site, your interaction with it, your introduction, is not when you walk in the front door. It's the approach to the building from when you park. It's to the walking up. It's what do you see as you approach? That's your first impression. And that's something that we want to incorporate in our design. We have an opportunity to really do it right.
Well, someone who used to be in hospitality, the first and the last impressions are quite important. And so I think Bingo. It does matter. It does matter here. What can the DMI members and the wider downtown community to help make this amazing project become a reality?
Well, there are two things right now, really. First of all, if anybody's interested in talking with the foundation about the capital campaign and what's involved, on the museum website, there's a tab that says join/give, and that's the foundation section. And so there's contact information about the project, who you need to talk to. And so I would encourage anybody who's interested to visit that. The other thing I would encourage people to do is I would encourage them to sign up for our newsletter, because as the biennium passes along, and as we get ready to submit and go in front of the legislature and continue the conversation and move to resource the next part of the project, the balance of the project, there's going to need to be opportunities for downtown Madison to indicate how important this is and what it means for the city. And when those come, this will be, if you're following our newsletter, if you're following, we're going to put that information out for people to have and then use if they so see fit. So it's, we're not done. We've acquiring the building is going to be a major important step. But we've still got some things to do between now and the ribbon cutting, hopefully in 2030.
It's all very exciting. Let's hope the whole community gets behind this and rallies behind this important project. All right. You talked about how you're adding so much more space and you're doing so much more interactivity with the amazing history you already have. Chris, this question was not just off the top of my head. What is the one story that you're not able to tell now because of your space constraints that you can tell with the new museum that makes you most excited about getting this project to happen?
I've got two, because when and they're the two that we start with when we take people through our storage facility to talk about what we can't show. The first one is the origin of On Wisconsin, which is a callback to a Wisconsin veteran. I don't know if you know this story, Jason. I think I know we've discussed, we may have discussed it. 160 years ago this November at the Battle of Missionary Ridge, which as the troops are climbing a slope about that high or about that steep, the flag of the 24th Wisconsin, from Milwaukee is one of the units that's going up. The color bearer gets tired. And in the Civil War combat, you need to understand that when the flag stops, the unit stops. And if one unit stops, other units are probably going to stop. Well, an 18-year-old adjutant comes on over, bounds over and says, "I'll take it from here," and grabs the flag and yells, "On Wisconsin," and leads the regiment to the top of the hill. And the flag of the 24th Wisconsin is one of the first flags atop Missionary Ridge. Great victory for the Union Army. Arthur MacArthur will later earn the Medal of Honor for that. His son Douglas will earn the Medal of Honor as well in World War II, the first father-son Medal of Honor combination in our country's history. That flag is in our collection. And in case you're wondering, that battle cry, yes, it is connected to the state song. It became the inspiration. That story became the inspiration for the state song and for the fight song of the University of Wisconsin. So many people probably are aware of Camp Randall and the connection to the Civil War. But this is yet another. Whenever you hear On Wisconsin, that is a callback to a Wisconsin veteran. The other one, we've got another battle flag. Do you know where the state seal came from and the state flag design that we have now?
I was not aware there was going to be a quiz on this podcast. So
I'm keeping you on your toes, Jason.
Yes, you are. Yes. No, I don't know the answer. I hope you do.
It comes from Wisconsin's Civil War battle flags. Because in 1861, the War Department, that's why you see so many states that have solid blue with the state seal in the center, is because the War Department said in 1861, we'd like you to send not just a U.S. flag with your unit, but send a state flag as well. And most states didn't have them. And originally, everybody's like, okay, the War Department said, yeah, just an eagle, holding things. But by 1863, as the flags are wearing out, a lot of states want to personalize it. And the state of Wisconsin realized we don't actually have an official state flag. So they took the seal, put it on a blue field, and then sent it. And we have examples of those flags in our collection. Of course, later in the 20th century, they added the words Wisconsin in 1848. But when you see the state flag, it is a callback to Wisconsin veterans of the Civil War. And so those are just two of many, many, many stories that we have that illustrate the legacy of Wisconsin veterans that people may not realize are staring them in the face or they're hearing every single day. And there's so many more. We've got a chaplain at Quezon. We've got a Wisconsin victim of the bombing of the USS Cole. We've got an amazing collection of Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan stories right now that we just don't have space for. To say nothing of the Civil War battle flags, to say nothing of some other things as well. So, I could give a whole presentation just on that question, Jason, but hopefully gives you some idea of some of the what you see at the museum is the tip of the iceberg. but this hopefully gives you some sense of what's in the rest of the iceberg that we really want to show and share with our visitors.
Well, let's all work together to make this a reality. And we're so thankful that it's happening right here in the heart of downtown Madison. To Chris Kolakowski, the executive director of the Wisconsin Veterans Museum, I started off by saying how excited I was for this podcast because Chris has amazing energy and amazing stories. I hope you all get to know Chris a little bit better, but connect with him. And let's find ways to help out our veterans and our Veterans Museum here in downtown. I want to say a huge thank you to our major series sponsors, Sinair, and our other sponsors, the Fiore Company and Hush Blackwell, for supporting our Advocacy Update series. Hopefully we'll see you downtown here at the end of summer. And if not, we'll see you come fall. We've got lots of events happening here at DMI. Thank you for all the support. We really do appreciate your work to make downtown Madison an economically strong, equitable, vibrant, and inclusive place to live, work, and visit. And the museum is doing that in spades. Thank you all very much. We'll talk to you soon. See you downtown.